Today's episode might be a little different because we're diving into a book that, well, didn't quite land for me as much as it did for Chris. So we're talking about Freemasonry as a Way of Awakening by Rémi Boyer. It's a book that aims to explore the deeper, more philosophical side of the craft, this idea of Masonry as a path towards personal and spiritual awakening. And on paper, that's right in our wheelhouse. But as we got into it, we found ourselves wrestling with it more than resonating with it. So today, we're going to have an honest conversation. What was the author trying to say? Where did it connect? And where did it lose us? And maybe more importantly, how does this version of awakening compare to the way we actually understand and experience Freemasonry? If you've read the book and loved it, stick around. We might challenge that a bit. And if you tried to get through it and struggled, you're definitely not alone.
The opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not represent the views of any Grand Lodge nor appendant body of Freemasonry.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Masonic Shelf podcast, a once a month deep dive into some of the best in Masonic writings and papers. Tonight, we got a crazy one for you. My name is Chris Williams.
And my name is Brad Kohanke. And this month's choice is Freemasonry as a Way of Awakening by Rémi Boyer. I don't know who translated it into English because Rémi is all obviously from France. And as we discuss this book, it'll become clear why I already know that. But hey, let's get into it.
In your introduction, you're exactly right. We're on different ends of the spectrum on this book starting out, but I will tell you that I had as much trouble with it as you did. And as much as I liked it, I disliked it the same amount. It was tough to get through. It was tough to decipher. It was tough in a lot of ways. But there were quite a bit of things that spoke to me, and I think would speak to many Masons. And knowing you the way I do, I know there were things that kind of reached out and grabbed you too. I feel badly that I wasn't able to get all I thought I could get out of it because of the trouble that I had of deciphering what he was saying. And sometimes it's like we talked during the week. Sometimes it's almost like he's throwing out word salad. I mean, it's tough.
Yeah, that's my biggest complaint. I mean, I've got plenty of stuff highlighted in here that I want to talk about. Um, the problem I had with it was, I got the feeling that he was trying really hard to sound intelligent. And he's he took 142 pages to say stuff that I think probably could have been said in 40. Um, and I don't like that style of writing. But like you said, I mean, there's stuff in here that's good that we can talk about. I just when I have to go to the dictionary as often as I did with this book, I don't like it.
Well, and after reading about the first half of the book, I got a little worried, and this book was my recommendation. I bought his trilogy of books about a year and a half ago, and I thought this would probably be a good book to read. And after about 50 pages, I started getting a little worried, and so I went outside the grid lines and started doing some research on Brother Boyer himself, and found out that he's perfectly well respected and you know has done a lot for Freemasonry or the mystical rites, more or less, and he's perfectly normal in that respect. So I went back to the book, and I just kept going, I'm not gonna. There are there are a lot of Masons that are in the same frame of mind as you and I that will individually get a lot out of this book, uh, but they're going to have to force themselves to stay in it. That's for sure. What do you want to talk about first?
Well, I want to talk about the forward, and then there's a preface, and then there's a preface to the first edition, and then there's a preface to the second edition. And I got to tell you, I read all of the three preface
Hmm.
prefaces, pref-
Prefaces, preface, whatever.
and I didn't highlight a single thing in those, but I did highlight some stuff in the forward.
Yeah.
So the first one was, he says, Remy teaches the essential doctrine of the awakening that is often expressed as listening in silence to the essential intervals between the notes. It involves the rigorous examination of the self in order to eliminate negative attitudes and behavior, ceasing to be driven by popular trends or media, and being no longer what Martinists term a man of the stream, like a cork bobbing along in a fast-moving river without any sense of destination or direction. Okay, that makes total sense to me. And if Remy would have written like this guy did, Howard Doe, then I think I probably would have enjoyed the book quite a
Yeah.
bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. And he tried to say, there's another place in the book where Remy tried to say essentially the same thing, but it was all over the place.
Well,
And
yeah,
you're
and
right.
it was 3 pages long. It,
Exactly.
it was
Exactly.
it was I, yeah, yeah. So it's not so much the topic or the subject matter that I had a problem with. It was the writing style. So
Yeah. Yeah. I can't argue with that.
so Howard goes on to say Freemasonry as practiced today is all too often driven by mundane notions of personal advancement through the hierarchy. Traditional rituals learned by heart but not really understood, charitable giving, and dining in the pleasant company of friends. It thereby becomes of purely historical and cultural interest rather than practicing and promoting true spiritual growth. It is like an overripe fruit in which, whilst the outer skin looks appealing, the essential fruit within has withered away.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I want to know if Howard has written a book.
Yeah. Right. Right. That he's right in our wheelhouse there for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And then the last thing he said that I thought was good is the original rituals the candidate could expect. In the original rituals, the candidate could expect informal and unscripted questions, the answers to which were meant to reveal whether he had really studied enough to prepare himself properly for the next important part of his journey towards becoming a master mason. Instead, lodges today have even formalized the questions so that all the candidate needs to do is give a parrot-like answer to a list of questions, the answers to which have already been provided, a practice of zero value. Right? I mean, and we've had discussions like this in the past where, the guys in the 1700s, 1800s, when they were meeting in rooms above taverns and stuff, they would gather together for the candidate's proficiency over a drink, and they would say, "Okay, well, tell us what this means." And it would be like in your own words, tell
Right.
us what this means. So
Right.
the guy really had to study it and understand it in order to explain it in his own way, sufficient enough to impress the guys so that he could move to the next level. Now, all you have to do is regurgitate a bunch of pre-written answers and then supposedly you're ready. Well, you're not ready because you don't know what any of those answers mean.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, yeah,
And
yeah,
the answers, when asked the question, and he answers the question in his own way, what it means to him, it's not the same as every other guy, every other Mason an- answer, which is exactly the way it's supposed to be.
yeah, because everybody's journey is different.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's supposed to be a personal
I mean,
journey.
how can you tell if a guy is really on the journey when his answer is word for word like everybody else's? Maybe
Yeah,
he is, maybe he's not. And Remy puts a lot of uh, weight on the officers of the lodge to see that the candidate or initiate is properly prepared, properly understood, properly trained, and it's not the way we do it necessarily.
yeah, yeah. But maybe it should be, you know. I mean, we've tried to encourage, in addition to assigning an instructor to teach him the memorization work, also include assigning him a mentor so that he could learn what some of that stuff means. But a lot of lodges don't have enough guys to provide instructors, let alone mentors too. So,
Yeah, yeah.
um,
But then again, you think about it, and we've talked about this a bunch of times, and that it only works when you start from the beginning the proper way, and you it keeps going. I mean, if the process breaks down anywhere along the way, then the end is not going to be the end that you're looking for. He's not going to be on his journey of understanding.
yeah. So, did you get anything else out of the prefaces? Prefaces?
No, no, those in the first one, the journey under the blindfold really jumped out at me, and I realized that he was going to talk about it more extensively and later on in the book. But that's the only thing that jumped out at me on that. I got all the way to the warning.
Yeah, yeah, me too. Me too. But these guys that wrote the preface, Jean-Pierre Guidicelli de Cressac Bachelleri, and then who wrote the other one? Serge Calais. And their writing style is as bad, if not worse, than Remy's.
Right?
I
It's
mean,
like
I didn't understand a damn thing they said.
it's like they're in competition or something.
All right, so what did you get? So we get to page one out of the Roman numerals, and chapter one is called warning.
Yeah, yeah. That very that very first quote up there: "Nothing is false that is true. Nothing is true that is false. Everything is the opposite of dreams of deceit." That's a pretty tough. That's a pretty tough thing to try to decipher. But then when you get into the body of it, there, it says Freemasonry, which Martinez de Pasquale considered apocryphal two centuries ago, is it a society of initiates? In almost all cases, we are obliged to conclude in the negative, having become a profane society incapable of asceticism and praxis, plagued by entrepreneurial and political, or more simply, bourgeois concerns. Freemasonry is distinguished only by a ceremonial, meaningless for most participants and assistants from the many clubs, circles, and associations that animate modern societies. That, I mean, I pretty much agree with that in a lot of ways.
Well, yeah, me too. And I actually highlighted that same paragraph So if you didn't read it, I was going to.
Yeah, it's you almost have to start this book, because you know where he's coming from that point on.
Well, yeah, yeah. All right. So moving on,
Yep.
chapter one of initiation. There's no quote for that one,
Nope.
but he says on page five, he says, like any organization and initiatory society conceived ideally to serve the liberation of the human being and to accompany the initiatory process of individuals and groups, can become a new prison. Gradually, the initiatory object will be abandoned for a totally different purpose to perpetuate the organization, to extend its influence, to develop its power. If there is a profanation, it is this one, the shift from the initiatory to the political, the sacrifice of the quest of being in favor of having and doing, the abandonment of verticality in favor of gaining territory or power. Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with him. I get that,
Yeah.
and I think you do too. You know, that
Absolutely.
you, and it goes along with what we were talking about in the forward with the regurgitation of memorized answers to questions that not really ever getting to the point where you understand what those questions and answers mean. And you know, expanding that from the individual to the organization, it becomes more about saving the buildings, building the membership, getting the numbers up,
Yeah.
and the original intent of the organization was to develop the individual into a higher level version of himself. And
Exactly.
if you were to ask 100 Masons right now, what's the purpose of Masonry? None of them would say that.
No. No,
Or
you're
very,
right.
very few. Very
You're
few.
right. You're right. And it's not that the regurgitation of ritual or the regurgitation of answers to questions is wrong or without merit. It's that if there's no depth behind it.
Yeah.
All it is that. I mean, you learn the ritual, or you went through the ritual, and you were asked questions and you answered the questions, and you were told that's it. No, you learn the meanings of a few symbols, and now all of a sudden you're a Mason. And I would argue that no, you're not. You
Yeah.
know, not in the sense that's Masonic. And we're going to come to a thing that's going to kind of throw that. I'll wait till we get to it. But uh, uh, one of the things uh, that I liked in the of initiation, the when he talks about the state of consciousness of self remembering, that was pretty cool.
Where is
Uh,
that?
that's on page 8.
Oh, I got stuff before then.
Oh, good. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
All right. On page six, secret societies assume three particular functions, both distinct and complementary, which we call exoteric, mesoteric, or sometimes esoteric, and esoteric. So he's got exo, meso, and eso. The exoteric function is primarily of a therapeutic nature. It aims to restore the individual alignment, the congruence between the body, emotion, and thought. Explain that. That's the exoteric function. He says it's primarily therapeutic and it aims to restore the individual alignment, the congruence between body, emotion, and thought.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay, and then the mesoteric function should be assumed by societies less numerous and more closed than the previous ones, already constituted in true traditional schools. They strive to give their students the basic skills needed to claim an approach to a real way. These qualifications may vary according to the currents of the traditions. Thus, in the Rosicrucian current, knowledge and mastery of the high sciences, of the trivium hermeticum will be required, namely alchemy, astrology, and magic. Okay, I understand that.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would consider that mesoteric between exo and esoteric. I, I always thought that that would be kind of an esoteric function.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then he says the esoteric function should concern, let us repeat, only autonomous beings. Autonomos means he who gives himself his own law. It means going outside of the circle of identifications, dilutions, representations, and mental crystallizations to reach the center with a capital C, where simply I am or I remain. So this is his this is basically his definition of being with a capital B, right?
Yeah.
And that's the purpose of initiation and awakening to Remy. And I get what he's saying, but then the rest of the book, the rest of the 140 pages, explains that paragraph. So I don't know. All right, what do you got on page 8? It looks like he's quoting
Yeah.
Ouspensky.
Right. Uh, it Down at the bottom, he talks about the third state of consciousness constitutes the natural right of man as he is. And if man does not possess it, it is only because of the wrong conditions of his life. It can be said without any exaggeration that at the present time, the third state of consciousness occurs in man only in the form of very rare flashes, and that it can be made more or less permanent in him only by means of special training. For most people, even for educated and thinking people, the chief obstacle in the way of acquiring self consciousness consists in the fact that they think they possess it. And he left out the word already, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That was actually a really good quote. That whole page is a quote
Yeah,
uh, by Ouspensky. Masonic obediences serve as a breeding ground for semi-internal societies, while Martinist orders serve as a platform where researchers from different horizons meet collectively. Both are not just that, of course. We would rank in the second group orders like the Templar and Magical Fraternity of Miriam, the Order of the Golden Dawn, the various Pythagorean orders, the Kabbalistic Order of Rose Croix, the Order of the Rose Croix of the Orient, and others. And then he says, and even a few names would come to haunt the third category, such as the Order of Osiris, the Order of Montos, and the Order of the Initiated Brothers of Asia, the Hermetic Brotherhood of Luxor, or the Order of the Golden Rosy Cross of the Ancient System. And I highlighted those because he's talking about the exo, meso, and esoteric organizations again. And I he's calling Freemasonry an exoteric organization.
yeah,
Well, these, the Golden Dawn and the Kabbalistic Order of Rose Croix are basically the mesoteric ones, and then he lists out these other ones as esoteric, and I guess they are esoteric because I've never heard of any of them.
yeah, yeah. I've never heard of most of them. Yeah, yeah.
The Hermetic Brotherhood of Luxor. I mean, that's a new one on me. I don't know that one.
Obviously Egyptian in some way.
Well, yeah. Well, and again, he's French, so there's some orders that are over there that are potentially not over here. And
The
may
magical
may
fraternity of
may never
Miriam.
be because they're male and female.
Exactly. exactly. Yeah,
And
yeah,
as we get further into the book and he starts talking about brothers and sisters,
right.
you understand that Freemasonry in France is co-masonry.
Exactly,
So
exactly, for sure. You know,
not that there's anything wrong with that,
no, well, no,
other than we would consider it clandestine.
exactly. You know, there's a whole list, and we've talked about that before too. But uh, uh, worked the correct way from the beginning, it doesn't matter whether it's male or female if it's done the right way, because it's not about one or the other. It's about a certain path, and I kept seeing him. You know how we used to compare uh, in the Scottish Rite the northern jurisdiction and to the southern jurisdiction, and sometimes we try to make a little fun of the northern jurisdiction because they weren't so as esoteric as we thought they were. And over a period of time, I started feeling like there was a lot of value in it. However, it was a whole different path. It's almost like that's what he's saying here. He's almost like he's making fun of uh, England and American Freemasonry, that it's completely watered down and not serving any kind of a real purpose. And it's hard not to agree with some of that.
Yeah, well, he's French. He has to make fun of us, right?
Right, right, right. That quote at the beginning of chapter 2 is worth reading. Did you highlight it?
No.
Uh,
The only quote I highlighted for the beginnings of the chapters was one that I thought was it was on chapter 5. And when we get there, I'm going to read it because it's the dumbest thing I've ever read.
uh,
Anyway, go ahead.
well, nothing is less strange than the contradictions that we discover in man. He is made to know the truth. He is in search of it. When he tries to seize it, he is dazzled and confused in such a way that no one would challenge him for it. Some want to rob man of the knowledge of the truth. Others want to assure him of it. Each employs such dissimilar reasoning that they negate his perplexity. He has no other light than that which is found in his own nature.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
actually pretty good.
it is good. It is good. I had to read that 3 or 4 times for the meaning to come out. It really is. It really is.
Is it
Oh, on the,
Isidore Ducasse? Isidore Ducasse is the name of the guy that wrote that.
right.
Yeah, and
The
that kind of goes back to that last quote we read in that last chapter about um, at the present time, the third state of consciousness occurs in man only in the form of very rare flashes,
Yep.
and
Yep.
that it can be made more or less permanent in him by means of special training. That that reminds me of a discussion we had a long time ago during officer leadership training about glances out of a window of a moving train, and every once in a while you just get this flash of consciousness. The picture becomes crystal clear, but only for a second. And then when you try to explain it to somebody, it loses its meaning, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. One of those you had to be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, the one thing that I highlighted in this chapter 2 on page 18, down there close to the bottom, the term interview.
Oh, I highlighted that too. Go
You
ahead.
did.
Yeah.
Go ahead and read it if you want.
No, you do it. You got it.
It's real. God, I got to agree with that. The term interview is preferable to that very Masonic and also very police-like term investigation. The interview must be part of a real encounter and not for the sake of investigation, which does not go far beyond the surface structure of communication. It 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 seems so logical that's what we should be doing. I mean, we make out of it a you know, like we're going to investigate you, you got no chance, buddy, but we'll see,
Well,
God.
and not only that, but you get as an investigator,
Right.
the three investigators, you get a sheet with pre-written questions, and then you ask the question and you write down his answer. I mean, it's just like the
Yeah,
proficiencies.
exactly.
You're not really learning anything about the guy. You
Exactly.
know, why are you interested in masonry? To become a better man. I mean, how many times has
Oh,
that been the answer, right? I mean, you might as well just type the answers out because they all say the same thing.
exactly.
I mean,
Exactly.
you're not learning who this guy is.
Oh,
You're just writing down some perfunctory answers to questions. But the
That,
next, I highlighted the next paragraph too. Each of these encounters follows a specific protocol, the establishment of a deep rapport, a precise collection of information, a mapping of contexts, an identification of the psychological and intellectual resources of the applicant, a clarification of the objectives, the verification of the ecology, a bridge to the future. The person conducting the interview must never lose sight of the fact that in no case, and especially if no follow-up should be given to this interview, should the layman feel worse after the meeting than before.
yep. I highlighted it too because that's huge right there. That's
Yeah,
really
yeah.
huge. God.
So, like I said, I mean, there's some good stuff in this book. I just I didn't like the author.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. So I know you highlighted this, uh, page 22.
oh, I got stuff before then.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. Oh, you're going passage under the blindfold, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. On the next page, it says, if the person is accepted in the initiatory setting, what will change in his family, professional, and religious life? There is often incompatibility between the approach envisaged, the requirements of commitment and availability of the spirit, and the family or professional context. And this is all still under the interview process.
Yep.
And then the analysis of the initiation request.
Yep.
Is it the request from someone else? A friend, a family member, imaginary or historical person with whom the candidate would have identified. The request may appear to have come from the candidate, but be a false request. It may seem to be dictated by a third party, but correspond to a real call. And these are all things that you're supposed to determine during the interview process. But none of that is on the investigation form.
No, no, not at all. Not at all. Not at all.
Okay, go
The
ahead.
the passage under the blindfold, and wow, I mean this kind of took me on a little trip because I kind of went farther than where he did here because I started imagining how important this really is, and we've all been there, but it's super important. Few people are aware of the importance of the passage under the blindfold. This dive into obscurity and uncertainty is in reality the first initiation, following which will be only a repetition of further and further elaboration. The passage under the blindfold is not a sort of playful exercise so that the brothers and sisters can demonstrate to the best of their ability their sagacity, their humor, or the full extent of their knowledge, but a plunge conducted by the candidate into the darkness of self. Wow. Wow.
The passage under the blindfold corresponds alchemically to the decomposition of the raw material. So this this would be like a chamber of reflection moment.
Exactly. Exactly. It's accomplishing, or is the way he's saying it, it's accomplishing much of what the chamber of reflection does because it gets him only in touch with himself. I mean, he's there alone. I mean, golly, it's
Well,
great.
and he's being interviewed, and it's an in-depth interview. and the interview is designed to make him think about himself,
Yeah,
probably in a way that has never been done before.
yeah. He's never even thought about that before.
Yeah, yeah. So, so when they say, I want to become a better man, well, what specifically about yourself do you not like?
Yeah,
And then, you really got to kind of confront yourself.
right, right. And don't you know the pause that you would get after that question?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because then he's got to think and he's got to come up with an answer.
Yeah, yeah,
And hopefully it's an honest one and not some, you know,
exactly,
like
exactly.
like in a human resources guy, like in an interview when you ask, well, what's your biggest flaw? Oh, well, I'm a perfectionist.
Yeah,
I try too hard to make everything just right. Oh yeah, that's a real flaw. Yeah, I mean, you can't get away with that.
no. Did you highlight the next page?
Number
Uh,
4,
number 4.
yeah,
Go for it.
initiation, instruction, and orientation to the tradition. The candidate knocking on the door of a lodge is not an object, but a potential subject of an initiatory process. He is not on the periphery of the concerns of the lodge, but at the center of a project which aims to change him from a man of the stream to a man of desire, to be realized as being in oneself.
Yeah, yeah. Did you do anything down below?
No,
Too often we see the candidates being systematically received fraternally because truly it is difficult to say no to someone who asks to join an initiatory vessel. However, the indiscriminate acceptance of many members in the Masonic obediences has led to the dissolution of its initiatory character. Wow, no kidding. It is the responsibility of the officers of the lodge to receive in temple only subjects ready for the quest and who are adequate to the lodge project. Uh, and then he goes on to talk about the accountability of the sponsors. The godfather in initiation is not a friend who offers a bit of the path for viewing. He is the referent and the guarantor, the referent being the subject for whom he must embody the spirit of the quest, the guarantor of the lodge he must preserve from any toxic intrusion. There are some lodges that apply a severe but justified rule. If the subject turns out to be unsuitable for the conditions of initiation to the point that the lodge must be separated from him, the sponsor agrees to leave the lodge at the same time as his godson.
yeah,
Pretty tough.
that's real tough.
Yeah,
But it reminds me of the Frank judges in the 30th degree.
absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
vouch, I vouch for him. Well, if we find him guilty, you're going to suffer the penalty too.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. But that reminds me of uh, our two gentlemen who at our lodge would sign off as referrals the night he picked up his petition so that they wouldn't have to be on the investigation committee.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And what he says in this book, which I totally agree with, if you are a referral, then you are his mentor.
Yeah.
You have signed on for his Masonic journey.
And
Right?
and you're guaranteeing that you know him well enough to recommend him to the lodge.
Exactly.
But these
Exactly.
guys, they would be like, well, if I'm a referral, if I'm a reference, I don't have to be on the investigation committee.
Yeah.
So they would sign the petition, and then the petition would go to the investigation committee, and they would say, well, we know these two guys, they're his references, he must be okay. And then they would do a cursory interview investigation because, well, these guys wouldn't have signed his petition if he was a bad apple, right?
Happens all the time.
And that it's not unique to our lodge, you
No,
know.
or any lodge for that matter.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
So.
it's interesting how as hard as this book was to read, how similar the issues are to Freemasonry, no matter where you are.
Yeah.
It's all the same stuff.
Yeah. Well, and I think he's probably facing these same problems in France too. I don't think he's just making fun of English and American Freemasonry.
No, I agree. And the thing is I can see that to a certain extent, it's got to be a bigger nightmare for him and those types of lodges than it is for us, because nobody expects, unfortunately, too much of our initiates. Certain things have been watered down depending on the lodge, so the expectation is not as high, and the expectation in his lodge, which is, if you were to achieve it, I'd love to be a part of it. I mean, that's got to be
Yeah.
it's got to be pretty cool.
Yeah.
So it's got to be and of course, once you start doing these things, it's like anything else. Once everybody knows what the rules are, all of a sudden you don't get John's godson, just because he's John's godson.
Yeah.
You know,
All right.
I
How about
didn't
the
do
next
any.
section, the first initiation?
Oh, you got something in there?
Well, yeah. Um, I, there was
Oh,
on
there it is.
the third bullet point on page 26. It
Yep.
creates a cleavage in the unity of the person, an artificial but technically effective cleavage between the profane person and the sacred person. From now on, there is an inside and an outside, a secular space and a sacred space, a secular time and a sacred time. And as the person progresses, the differentiation of the two begins to disappear, and it all becomes sacred place and sacred time.
Exactly.
But when you're first initiated, the lodge is the sacred space. The time you spend there and with your mentor and with your instructor are the sacred times. But then as you progress towards this, I'm going to call it awakening because that's what he calls it, uh, that that differentiation disappears.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Cannot argue that at all. Cannot argue that at all.
How about number 6, the initiatory work?
Uh,
Instruction should not be reduced to an introduction to symbolism, even if brilliant. It must offer a real corpus for study and a precise and proven program of psychophysiological exercises that all aim to silence the mind, to give access to silence, to remember oneself in an ever increasing awareness, and to prepare for mastery.
yeah. Yeah. That's the most important part of that whole thing right there.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah, there's actually more in here that I
Yeah.
like than I realized. After I started looking through these pages, there are chapters and sections where I didn't highlight anything.
Yeah. There are several in that too. And I got to thinking, my God, we're not even going to get through half this book in 2 hours.
Yeah. All right, chapter 3, the initiatory work, project, and setting. I highlighted the first sentence. Initiatory work has two main functions, a restorative function and an awakening function. The restorative function is manifested by the ritual. It is supported by the setting and guaranteed by the order or the rite. The awakening function is conveyed by practices, supported by the process, and guaranteed by the setting. Yeah, I don't know what that means, but
I
I
don't, yeah, I
highlighted it.
was just going to say, I don't know what to say about that.
Yeah, and I probably highlighted it because I didn't understand what it meant.
Yeah. Well, don't feel bad. I highlighted it too.
I didn't have anything else in that chapter.
Yeah, I didn't either. I didn't either.
Okay, well, moving right along.
Chapter 4.
Space, time, and companionage.
Uh, that down about halfway there, the lodge is a kind of parenthesis inside the world, a space dedicated by the will of those gathered there to finally be, for a time, themselves, or to try to approach their authentic being. I kind of like the way he said that. The lodge is also formed in a time apart, a different time that we call sacred, a kind of interval between the profane world, a breach in the conditioned temporality. And unfortunately, I highlighted the whole dang page, but he he ends up talking about how important it is that space is respected and that space is special and kept special, and if you violate that specialness, you're asked to leave.
Yeah. And how sacred and special is that time and space when you're joking about a goat?
There, you got my stomach hurting again.
Right?
You're right. You're exactly right. When that's all he's thinking about.
Yeah. So on the next page, it kind of restates what we had already said earlier. Later, much later, all time will be sacred. All place will be the place of mystery, since the subject will have verified by experience that it is both the temple and the way. That he is both the temple and the way is what he should have said. But yeah. Okay, chapter 5. I have to read this quote because it's also by Isidore Ducasse. And maybe you can tell me what it is that he's trying to say here. Yes, good people, it is I who order you to burn on a shovel reddened in the fire and with a little yellow sugar, the duck of doubt with vermouth lips, which, in a melancholy struggle between good and evil, spills tears that do not come from the heart and creates everywhere without a pump a universal void. This is the best you can do.
Sure glad my whole grade doesn't hinge on that.
It's like, what the hell does that say?
That is
And what does it
terrible.
have to do with the initiatory process?
Wow.
I mean, is there some alchemical reference in here that we're just not getting, maybe?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, yellow sugar and a shovel reddened by fire and a duck of doubt with vermouth lips.
Those were the one of those things that I went and took a couple aspirin and went up and moved on. Wow. He talks down at the bottom of that page about it's heartbreaking that the lodges are filled with uneducated and ignorant people who are not readers. It's interesting that he went into that. Uh,
With something that nobody would want to read.
exactly. Right. Right. Wow.
Yeah, the corpus is composed of fundamental text particular to the current, the order, and the lodge in which they are inscribed, but also of a literary and artistic corpus without which the initiate cannot process a true traditional culture. I don't know. Again, I don't know what he's saying here.
I don't either.
The traditional corpus, which is hermetic in most cases, therefore deserves to be inserted into a larger literary and artistic ensemble. The discerning researcher will discover that nothing that is stated in traditional corpora is ignored in literature and art. All arcana are found in poetry, painting, sculpture, and music. Indeed, there are many artists and writers who have the sense of being. Capital B. Many are confronted with the crucial issue of death. The practices of an order with a truly initiatory orientation all concur in conquering the zone of silence, silencing internal dialogue and reactive emotions to bathe in this infinite interval in which being, our own nature, is encountered. Okay, I get that. I understand that. Um, you don't you don't have to go through this initiatory process to be an awakened being. And
Yeah.
he's claiming that you could insert quite a bit of art, music, poetry, sculpture, painting, into the corpus of training materials because these artists have achieved this sense of being that the candidate, the initiate, is looking for.
I mean, what are the tracing boards?
Well, exactly. Yeah.
You know, art, poetry, symbolism, the whole bit. I mean, it's all
Mhm.
there.
What about the three phases of the initiatory process? You got anything in there?
No,
I,
let's
I
see.
I've highlighted a lot of stuff in here. Um, we can identify three phases in the initiatory process corresponding to three trials. The first phase is the mastery of the higher symbolic function. These tools directly mobilize the great archetypical energies without going through language. A symbol is efficient if it spontaneously triggers the state of consciousness or the corresponding energy process by a kind of synesthesia. So, most of the time when we talk about the power of symbolism, we're talking about ideas that cannot be expressed adequately through words, right? But he seems to look at symbols differently. He is imagining that these symbols contain some sort of energy that speaks to the subconscious.
I don't totally disagree with that premise. Uh, I think that intuitively, I think that I've been in that we've all probably been in that situation before, depending on our life experiences and everything else.
I don't know. I don't know, man. I mean, it's almost like looking at a symbol and considering it a talisman, that contains some sort of power to ward off evil or to manifest
Well,
wealth or, like St. Christopher's medal or
there
something.
was there was a time that there was a brother that would tell this story about uh, turning the corner and seeing these guys hammering on a roof.
Yeah,
And
but that was putting into words the meaning of the symbol. It wasn't saying that the gavel had some sort of mystical energy that spoke to my subconscious and enabled me to achieve something mystical.
well, to a certain extent, it joggled your subconscious in a way that made you remember, you know, that the original intent of that symbol. But
But it didn't do it through some sort of magical power that it possessed. It
no,
was it was a symbol that conveyed a message that would have taken quite a few words to convey.
right, right.
So, okay, and then the second one, he says, uh, the entry into silence. This is the second phase of the initiatory process, the most important phase, the obligatory phase, which can be qualified by the expression, before the beginning, there is silence. So, in the very dimension of silence that the adept operates, any theurgy, any alchemy, internal or external, implemented in the chaos and noise of the person is not only vain, but probably toxic because it densifies and crystallizes the fears and anxieties of the mind. No initiation is accessible apart from silence. It is in the silence and in the void that the real ways are born. It is there that they begin. It is there that they unfold. It is there that they finish in a perfect simultaneity. Okay, I buy that.
Yeah,
I, I
absolutely.
agree with that. I don't agree with the first premise, the first phase of the initiatory process, but I agree with the second. And then the third phase, of which nothing can be said, is the realization of being or of being. The capital letter is there for a reason. So there's a third phase, but nothing can be said about it. So he doesn't say anything about it.
Jeez.
So, I guess the third
Maybe,
stage is attainment.
yeah, it almost has to be, doesn't
Well,
it?
I guess.
If he can't
I
say
don't know,
anything
because he
about
didn't say anything about it.
it, the fact that he's not saying anything about it, it almost has to be.
Chapter 7, the theory of three persons in the initiatory process.
It's an interesting chapter,
The profane person, right?
right?
And then the sacred person builds himself up on the basis of the new conditioning. And it
Mhm.
says this cleavage in the person is technically interesting because it creates an interval between the two persons, a crack in the personal legend that the practices will enlarge into a breach and then into a wide door giving access to being. That is why, at first, this artificial opposition between the profane and the sacred is necessary. It is a technique, not an ideology. We will observe that the sacred person does not have the same behaviors as the profane person, that the concern for ethics and fraternity present in the sacred precinct tends to fade in the profane world. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, and that's what we were talking about earlier in the initial phases of the initiation process. There's a sacred space and a sacred time and a
it's interesting. The little paragraph after that talks about how deep the cleavage has to be rather than width at the beginning.
hmm. Oh, the deeper the fissure.
Yeah, deep before it is widened, the deeper it descends into the depths of the psyche, and the more it allows the radiance of the light of the being. Interesting.
Yeah, and I think if more time was spent explaining the obligations, that rift could be a little bit deeper.
Exactly. Exactly.
So then he talks about the witness, which is the third person in the
Yeah.
initiation process. The initiatory cleavage of the person cannot continue in the absence of adequate practices. In most Western initiations, we can consider that a ceremony, even conducted without consciousness, is in a stereotypical manner, produces the effect of cleavage. To maintain the cleavage, a third person, a third term, will therefore be introduced by self-remembering practices and self-presence. This is the witness. It will be the lucid part whose mission will be to become more and more aware of what is happening in the field of human experience.
Yeah. And not a person actually, but another
Another aspect of the initiate.
aspect of the
Yeah,
initiation. Yeah.
he starts to look at himself and the way that he conducts himself both in the profane world and in the sacred world and begins to realize that he can't be both.
Exactly.
He has to choose one, and is he going to choose to go back to the way that he was, or is he
Exactly.
going to continue to move forward? And it's only by recognizing this, by becoming the witness to your own behavior,
Yeah.
that you're
Yeah.
going to achieve that.
It's the first aspect or the beginning of the consciousness of of transformation.
Yeah.
Actually conscious transformation. Hey, at the bottom of 59, did you read that? You never got back to me on that. I thought that was really
Are you talking about
one of the
the
functions of
footnote?
religion. Huh?
The
Yeah,
footnote?
yeah,
No, I didn't know why you were
yes.
sending me a picture of the page. So go ahead and
One of
read
the functions of religion is the control of women and therefore of reproduction, which is why women's freedom has always frightened the great monotheistic patriarchal religions, including totalitarian politics of the right or left that are structured and oriented like religions.
it. Well, that's an interesting statement,
It's
and
a it's a huge statement.
but I don't know what it has to do with the book.
I don't either.
It's a footnote.
Yeah, it's the potent power, territory, reproduction triangle underlies all our actions, words, and thoughts. Reproduction means not only sexual reproduction, but the reproduction of myself, the person, in the same way. And that's where that footnote came from.
Hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. I went with the first paragraph on the next page.
Oh yeah.
With the permanence of the witness, the meeting and the reduction of the profane person and the sacred person will be a simple formality. The permanence of the witness makes it possible to go beyond the columns, beyond the pairs of opposites. There is no more interior and exterior, dream and reality, profane and sacred. The person will float in the scenery as one element among others unrelated to being in itself. It disappears completely only with physical death. Only the fixation is erased. It is dying before you die. I is no longer identified with the person, just I am. The witness himself will disappear to give place, the whole place, to being. So that's him in the ultimate, the culmination of the process.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the
And
profane person disappears, the witness disappears, and what's left is the sacred person,
is
or
the
just
sacred person.
the
And
being.
the dying before you die, that we've heard that forever. I
Well,
mean,
yeah,
that's,
the death of the ego, right?
yeah.
This functions in the initiatory process.
You know, that paragraph on page 62 in the middle, those who abandon the way and the initiatory work under the pretext of a disappointment within the lodge, right, or obedience, are simply not ready for initiation. On the contrary, there are all those who turn this disappointment into strength. They realize that it is not the traditional forms, the human structures, so fallible that they must hunt down, but the initiatory, informal, and unconditioned paths of the human. Good statement. True statement.
Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, that is. I mean, that's the fraternity being divided into what it was originally intended for and the
Yep,
current political state that it exists in. So you
absolutely.
can't you can't poo-poo the teachings of the craft because you're upset with the craft's political leadership, right?
Exactly. And you know what
Because it's
happened?
there. You just need to go and find it, even
Exactly.
if it's not being given to you
Yeah.
where you are.
Yeah. It's like the statement in the first book of the Entered Apprentice. You know, the craft does not change to fit the brother. The brother must change himself to fit the craft. I mean, that's a big statement in the reading of on the Entered Apprentice degree. And the sad part about it is we are in the state of disarray that we are largely because guys have decided that they are disappointed in the craft and have tried to change it to make it what they think it ought to be.
Yeah. And they don't need to.
No, they
They
don't
just
need
they
to.
just need to realize that the craft is not the the political aspect that has inserted itself.
Exactly.
I mean,
Exactly.
he says in the very first chapter, I mean, the very first paragraph, most of the obediences and traditional orders have a hard time escaping the action of the Luciferian triangle of power, territory, and reproduction. Internal struggles, competitions between organizations, the professionalization and commodification of initiation are commonplace. They reflect the radical break with traditional rules and principles and the lack of initiatory work by the leaders of these organizations, more concerned with their careers than with their awakening.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't it interesting when he starts talking about things that he considers wrong? He starts writing in real English.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And I don't know the man. I mean, I wouldn't mind meeting him. I wouldn't mind listening to him talk sometime. It's just that he's out there. I'd love to understand what's in his mind.
Some operative practices require a minimum of isolation and relative silence.
Yep.
Contacts within the order with unqualified members can be difficult. The partitioning must either be clearly explained or totally invisible so as not to create, by simple incomprehension, feelings of rejection, dissensions, and tensions in the organization. So,
Yeah.
this is where he's talking about seeking out like-minded guys
Yeah.
and either joining a formal organization that is designed to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish, or finding an informal gathering of people and then but not either keeping it secret or um, explaining it completely to whoever asks so that they can either decide that they want to pursue it or that they don't want any part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know where we pass it up, if we did pass it up, and I apologize if we didn't. But he explains about making the request for initiation. You know, the so many times guys are not even allowed to make the request. You know, they ask a question, and the next thing they know, a petition is in their hand. All they got to do is sign it, and they're going through it. If a guy does not ask, if he does not have the wherewithal to ask and the reason to ask, it shouldn't happen. But we're so hot to try to just, I love this guy. He's a great guy. He needs to be a Mason. Boom. It's
Mhm.
wrong, wrong. Did you have anything else in that chapter?
Yeah, yeah, I do. On 64, he's talking about profane
Is it
behaviors can emerge in the field of the sacred and disrupt the life of the lodge. For
right?
example, there can be a need to justify oneself or a tendency to long, superficial discussions or oratorical jousting.
You can see what that is in your mind, right?
Well, yeah, but I like the part where he says, This is the most common case in Masonic obediences. The setting of the lodge is not if the setting of the lodge is not guaranteed by the worshipful master, the border between sacred and profane is vague and shifting, and allows for this kind of stuff to happen.
Yeah,
And just like
yeah,
in our conversation with Chris Galloway, it all depends on the worshipful master and whether or not he is guaranteeing the sacredness of the space and time within the
yeah.
lodge.
And that every person in that lodge is aware that he is guaranteeing the sacredness of that lodge. That only then can they all relax and be on the same page. He talks about that several places where the venerable master is completely responsible for that.
Yeah, and they call theirs venerable masters. I was
Yep.
changing it to worshipful,
Yeah. Same guy, right?
but the absence of an initiatory practice sooner or later leads to the trivialization of the sacred, and it is a prelude to its invasion by the profane because the profane conditionings are particularly stubborn and inclined to expand and strengthen. So what winds up happening is people no longer stand and address the worshipful master. We used to call it talking from their asses, right?
Yeah.
They stay
That's
in their
right.
chair and they argue between each other across the lodge. There's side conversations going on. There's arguing going on,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the sacredness and brotherhood disappears.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't have anything else in that chapter, so we're on to. Oh, the questions and answers. Some of these were actually pretty interesting.
There were a few interesting ones. Not all of them, but some of them were pretty interesting.
So, where do you want to start?
Uh, the page 70 at the top. Did you highlight that?
No, but I highlighted the question on page 69. I'll read that and then you can read your
Okay.
part.
Okay.
The question was what is the ultimate function of ritual? Is it essential? And he says the history of initiatory societies has shown that external or semi-internal initiatory orders without rituals are not viable. The ritual has a sacralizing function. It is that which seals the sacred space and time. It also presents a container function by offering the person a space-time in which to encounter with being, in which the encounter with being can be approached. Go ahead.
On the other hand, it is necessary to distinguish within the ritual itself the ceremonial rite. The ceremonial allows the brothers and sisters gathered in the sacred enclosure to gradually prepare for silence and to escape from the troubled zone to enter the peaceful garden in which the rite will be operated. The ceremonial is always the support of self-remembering, a slow advance towards oneself, the unconditioned, and it is only in the shared silence, all internal dialogues extinguished, that the rite can be practiced. The ceremonial covers almost all of the time of the ritual. The rite, as such, requires only 2 or 3 minutes of true silence, the time of the lighting of 1, 3, or 7 torches and an invocation. The invocation is born of silence. The word springs from emptiness since it did not pre-exist. The operative invents, creates, and generates each word of the invocation in this very moment. A ritual is never the repetition of a past act, for each time it is a creation here and now. Every time is the very first time. Memory, another face of time, is erased for the non-time of the invocation. Wow. Would it be cool to sit in a lodge like that?
Well, yeah, and actually we have,
Yes, we have.
um, and it's usually um, in a lodge that incorporates some kind of a musical interlude
Mhm.
at some point,
Mhm.
because I mean you can have a moment of silence, and usually that occurs during the ritual, like he says, when the senior deacon is doing his ceremonial duties during the opening of the lodge, right? But if during the course of the meeting you have, for example, at St. Albans Lodge, they have two readings, and in between the readings, they have a musical interlude. And when I was there this last time, they had a reading and then uh, a piece by Chopin,
Hmm.
and then a second reading. And so that interlude gave you an opportunity to kind of think about the first reading
Exactly.
and what it meant. And there was no discussion. This was purely your own thoughts about what it may have meant to you, you
And
know?
how long was this interlude?
Um, 4 or 5 minutes.
Okay.
It wasn't, they didn't play the whole piece, but
Right.
it was long enough to meditate on, you know?
So please, yeah. So please tell me there was no conversation during that time.
There was none.
Yeah. That's ooh, that's huge.
Yeah, I
That is
mean,
huge.
it gave the whole meeting a completely different feel.
Yeah.
I think those guys, Pete and the rest of those guys at St. Albans have really got something special there.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
All right.
Any other
Um,
questions jump out at you?
well, yeah, the next one. I mean, I highlighted quite a few of them. How
Initiatory.
technically can we reach this level of invocational work? He says by conscious breath, therefore in a simple and difficult way. Simple because it's child's play, difficult because the mind, which feeds on hyper complexity and agitation, hates the simple. It gets bored as soon as we go into simplicity. Yeah,
Any
it's really difficult to think about nothing.
yeah. Any time any person that's tried to meditate runs into that all the time.
I do. I have to do guided meditations because
Yeah.
my mind goes off on different tangents
Yeah. You
when
got
I'm
monkey mind, like most
well, yeah.
people.
Yeah. So I use guided meditations and
Yeah.
it gets me there, you know. Ideally, the morning of the working, as soon as we get up, we should begin to divide the consciousness. to breathe consciously, and to orient ourselves towards the evening work. Also, be aware that our sisters and brothers are preparing in the same way. Be aware of the movement of beings who will join to share an experience of the sacred. If we orient all day toward the evening work, we will arrive at Lodge in an increased awareness and carrying a great energy, even if our preparation is very imperfect.
Who can deny that?
Mhm.
No way to deny that. Wow.
What about the next one?
Initiatory performance.
Yeah. Yeah, I highlighted some stuff, but it's not of any consequence. You distinguish or even oppose initiatory societies and initiatory ways. Can you clarify this distinction? Initiatory societies are human creations that reflect our beliefs, our adaptations to the environment, our relationship to history. They are largely determined by the context in which they appear and the real motivations, conscious or unconscious, of the founders and their followers. The real ways are written in our original nature. They are not conditioned by culture, by geography, or by history. They emerge in the individual, in the heart of silence, as a pure creative energy that must learn to know and find its stride. So, this reminds me of the conversation we had on a previous episode about the founders of the, like the Golden Dawn, for instance, and all of these organizations that appear and then disappear as soon as their founders leave,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
And he's saying basically that they're cults of personality. You know, their founders may have
Right.
had the right idea, but it doesn't survive them.
Yeah.
And but like the Golden Dawn, it gets reborn 100 years later, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I guess he's looking at the rebirth of those societies as initiatory societies that try to um, codify the initiatory process, and therefore it loses all its sacredness to him
Yeah.
because the real initiation takes place internally and has nothing to do with societies, which kind of goes against why he wrote the book to begin with.
In a way, absolutely.
He's
Absolutely.
trying to point out ways that Freemasonry can be a way of awakening, and then he's poo-pooing Freemasonry as an initiatory society that has codified everything and
Exactly.
therefore lost its meaning.
We haven't got to it yet, but it seems like it should fit right in here. Do you remember the quote, or did you highlight it? I did, if I can find it. Uh, uh, about uh, if it were all about the ritual, then an actor could go through the ritual and be awakened. Trying to make
Mhm.
the point that it's not about the ritual, it's about you know the understanding of the ritual and everything. Did you highlight that?
Well, that's that previous question. The what do you mean by initiatory performance, right?
Was it
He says
was the quote
it's
there?
to avoid an almost superstitious relationship to the ritual, to grasp that everything is ritual, that what makes the sacred gesture and word lies in us and not in the object. It is good to try initiatory performances just as there are artistic performances, but we can improvise a ritual. We can conduct a ritual in an unusual place, forest, cemetery, public dump, brothel, prison, palace, hospital, street. Yeah, so I mean, one is the importance of the ritual, and the other is the ritual is garbage. What factors do you think are causing the current breakdown of the initiatory milieu? Today, the great Masonic or related obediences and the great spiritualistic or traditional movements having become actual institutions, prisoners of political and economic imperatives of profitability and expansion, cannot propose to all their members a real initiatory program, for that would scare away the majority of them and would lead to a serious financial crisis or even bankruptcy of the organization. Moreover, there are many leaders or staff of these organizations who live off initiation, some completely, others partially, with many secondary benefits. In initiation, only that which is conquered by oneself, with oneself, and in oneself is operative. What is given to us is inoperative, all the more so what is sold to us.
Yep, yep, yep.
Uh, I got a couple of other things highlighted, but reading through them, they don't stick out to me very much.
That are we up to? Do you think that the therapeutic function is really within the competence of initiatory societies? That the next question.
Yeah,
Top 79.
79. Yeah,
Did you highlight that? I did.
I highlighted the first two sentences, but you can go ahead.
Yeah, some initiatory societies are therapeutic. They are not of the Masonic type. With regard to Masonic or related orders, we should never accept, even in an external structure, a person in trouble. Such a person requires the skills of a psychotherapist or a psychiatrist. On the other hand, an external initiatory society has a reconciling function. It attempts to help the person to reconcile with herself, her environment, the world, her world. We presuppose that it is easier to approach the quest when the person is stabilized, but in the me, when the me is built, before undoing the person, it must be completed. However, all the traditions of the world present even exhibit counterexamples of what I have just expressed.
Yeah, but
In other words, it goes back to the we take good men and make them better. We don't take bad men and make them good. And there's a lot of I've heard a lot of arguments to that.
well, I thought the next one was interesting too because he's talking about accepting into the initiatory process, into the organization, people with what we would deem to be a mental illness, right? Who are
Right.
not who are not even operating in a functional manner in the profane world, right?
Therefore, they can't possibly function in an awakened state, which
Right,
is not
because
entirely true.
they have to be something that you undo before you can remake, right?
Yeah.
And they aren't quite something yet.
Yep.
And then he says, you have suggested that some psychotic states may not be far removed from the experience of awakening. Can you explain this? Holy crap, how do you explain that? I guess the line between brilliance, genius, and insanity is very
Yeah.
thin.
And I'll
Again,
tell you what.
beforehand, let us recall a necessary prudence toward the word awakening, and even more about the experience of awakening. What we call awakening is neither an awakening nor an experience. It is only for convenience that we use these words. The person has experiences or makes experiences. Awakening is a non-experience. When the person ceases to have and to do, it leaves room for being. Being is the awakening.
You know, when you talk about that, how many of the most brilliant minds and artistic minds, music, uh, writers and painters and all that have been uh, not functional people of society.
Hmm. I got nothing until page 87. Does initiation have a political function? Clearly and definitely no! Exclamation point. It says the more the seeker advances on the path of initiation, the more the farce of the world appears to him, and politics today stands out as the farce of farces.
Yep. Yep.
Well, we're on to transitional conclusion. And then after that, the three initiatory vignettes, and I highlighted nothing in any
No,
of them.
no, I didn't. I mean, we're gonna make the point. I think we make the point of what the book is all about, and anybody that wants to come read it is going to get out of those what they get out of them.
All right, so transitional conclusion. We sometimes wonder if Freemasonry can still be or become again initiatory. Perhaps it would be useful to ask in advance if it ever was, if there is not a great confusion about the initial Masonic project, and if we do not expect more from Freemasonry than what it can offer. Perhaps the answer to these questions is ultimately irrelevant. Indeed, Freemasonry remains a formidable potential tool of work by the setting that it guarantees. A successful transplant of the initiatory process seems quite feasible. The survival and development of an organization becomes the priority at the expense of the quality of the work. Um, And then the last thing I have is brothers were waiting for a practice at both personal and lodge levels, and that a growing number, without renouncing their initial Masonic commitment, for the most part, were returning to smaller and more closed Masonic obediences and towards Buddhism, Orthodoxy, martial arts, to find the pragmatic axis likely to lead them beyond the columns.
You know what? To me, that says well, I highlighted that whole most of that whole page, and when I read that, it said to me that and I could see it that Masonry wasn't doing it for them, and that they tried to find a obedience that the common profane would be a little worried about joining. Does that make any sense? And that way the experience might be more what they were looking for.
Hmm.
Because I can't tell you, I haven't thought about the same thing. You know, I see guys, step into the side, not getting out of masonry, but going to other organizations, thinking they're going to get that experience that they're looking for. So
Well, yeah, you and I have done that.
yeah, absolutely.
So, well, you said you had a wrap up that you want to read?
Yes, I do.
You
Yes, I
want to do
do.
that now?
Yeah.
And then we can grade the book.
Okay. Oh boy, it gets better and better, doesn't it? In finishing our look at Boyer, we must realize that his way of awakening is an invitation to move from the theater of the ritual to the laboratory of the soul. Boyer's message to the Masonic reader is simple yet demanding. The lodge is not merely a place we go. but a state of consciousness we must achieve. He challenges us to stop being profanes with aprons and to become true operative Masons of the Spirit, men who use the square to align their character and the compasses to expand their love for all humanity. While the world outside may be chaotic and the lodge room sometimes distracted, the true initiation happens in the silence of our own hearts. As Boyer teaches, the light we seek is not found in the words we recite, but in the awakened presence we bring to the world once the lodge doors are closed. Our work is to ensure that we live in the world. We are no longer of the profane world, but are instead living stones in a temple that is eternal, internal, and ever shining. The true Masonic secret is not what is said behind tiled doors, but what is awakened within the man who finally decides to truly pick up his tools.
That was really well written. You should write a book.
Who would read it?
Well, I tell you what, I'd rather read yours than this one.
Yeah, well, I tell you what. Well, we'll get to it in a second. Go ahead. You had something you were gonna read.
No, I'm gonna end it with that. But we got to grade the book.
Okay.
You want to go first? You want me to go
Yeah,
first?
no, I don't care. I want to say that I was back and forth so many times about. In fact, I even called you early on and said you want to change books, you want to do something different, because it was so complicated and so aggravating trying to figure it out. But taking the time to go over it and trying to flesh out the what he was trying to say was actually a little rewarding, and I enjoyed that part. I regret that there's so much more inside of it that I didn't get, that I know is in there that I didn't actually get. But so I liked it as much as I didn't like it. So, but it's like the guy that went into the restaurant and didn't have a good meal on the way out. He said, "Well, we've been there once."
Well, how many white balls are you going to give this one?
10 being the best we can give any book. I'm going to split the middle, five white balls.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It kind of blows your mind, doesn't it?
Shocked that you gave such a low rating.
Well, let me.
This guy's still alive,
I know. let me clarify it. I think that any Mason who has irritations about how American Freemasonry, what it is and what it's become, should read this book, because he's going to realize that it's not all fun and games every place else either, and that things are different and a lot of things are the same. But I think it's a worthwhile book to read. And of course, he's got two others. This is a part of a trilogy.
I know. He's got Rosicrucianism as a way of awakening and Hermeticism as a way of awakening.
Martinism.
Martinism, right.
Martinism as a way of awakening.
Right.
Don't ask me if I'm going to read those. I've got them, but I don't know if I'm going to read them. What do you think?
You and I texted all week about this book.
More
and
than
you were doing research about the guy and trying to come up with explanations as to why he was writing the way that he was, and that he really knew what he was talking about. And you were sending me quotes from other people, and all I could think was, this guy is so pretentious with the way that he writes that I can't get into it, and I don't care what anybody else says. And it kept reminding me of that joke about the Aggie that goes up to Harvard and is walking around campus, just kind of taking a tour, and he runs into a guy because he needs to go to the restroom, and he says, "Excuse me, can you tell me where the bathroom is at?" And the guy says, at Harvard, we don't end our sentences with prepositions. So the Aggie says, can you tell me where the bathroom's at? And that's basically how I felt about this book.
Yeah,
Can you just tell me what
yeah,
it is that you mean?
yeah, yeah. And it's funny how there were parts in here where he actually talked lucidly to where you could understand it.
Only when he was bitching about
Yes, you're exactly right.
masonry.
You're exactly right.
So you're going to be shocked, but I'm going to give it a higher rating than you gave it.
Oh, you got to be kidding me.
No, no, because there was stuff in here that I thought was interesting. If you could just get past the level of pretentiousness in his writing style. Um, I'm going to give it a 6.1.
It's fair. It's fair.
Um, and you know my rating scale.
Yeah,
If it's a 9 or above, pay whatever they're asking. If it's 8, drive wherever you need to go to get it. If it's a
yeah,
7, get it.
yeah.
Anything under a 7, I don't know that I would. I would not have finished this book if we were not doing a podcast about it.
Well, you know what else? I think that if I was watching this podcast, however way Jason decides to edit it, but if I was watching this podcast, I could not. You couldn't keep me from buying it.
You're
I would
kidding.
have to buy it. I'd have to know what the heck these guys, were talking about. I'd have to buy
Really?
it.
Huh.
Yeah, that's me. I mean, I would have to buy it.
Well,
I mean, 140 pages, anybody can read 140 pages.
yeah, but life is so short to waste time on
It is.
books you don't like.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And I tell you, it was so complicated that our producer has left the country and is not coming back apparently.
Well, and we had to do this show early because I'm leaving the country.
Oh yeah. Where are you going?
Italy.
Ah, wow. Pretty place.
Yeah, I leave Wednesday. So,
Well, good.
all right,
Hope you have a good time.
let me wrap this up.
Okay.
All right, to wrap things up, this was one of those books that gave us more to push against than hold on to. Freemasonry as a way of awakening sets out to frame the craft as a deeply introspective, almost mystical path. And while there are moments where that idea lines up with the symbolic and philosophical side of Masonry, for us, the execution didn't just connect quite right. At times, it felt abstract to the point of being hard to apply and maybe a little removed from the lived experience of most Masons. That said, even a book you don't enjoy can still be useful. It forces you to clarify what you do believe, what resonates with you about Freemasonry and what doesn't. And in that sense, this one definitely sparked some worthwhile conversation. So if you're considering picking it up, just know what you're walking into. And if you've already read it, we'd be curious to hear where you landed. Did it click for you or did it miss the mark? As always, thanks for listening. And until next time, keep reading, brethren.